Seb Kennedy is a global gas and LNG analyst, and he joins us from Perez Zeledon in Costa Rica. Thank you very much for joining us. I wonder if you would say, 6 days in, that we're in uncharted territory here when it comes to how this is affecting the energy industry worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. It has the potential to be an unprecedented energy shock to the global economy. Everything really depends on how long shipments through the Strait of Hormuz are disrupted and inhibited. Currently, the market's actually been able to absorb the hits relatively well. We have seen a spike in prices, but if you take Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the impact upon energy markets as your benchmark, then we are still a long way away from the extreme price movements that we saw then in 2022. However, there is huge uncertainty about how long Qatari LNG exports are going to be shut in. And if that proceeds for several months, which is entirely possible, we don't have any certainty, then we could see the impact upon prices exceeding what we saw in 2022.
And especially is that because so much of the world, particularly Asia, and the millions and millions of people there rely on LNG from this area for their energy needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Asia is the Asian countries are the major recipients of Qatari LNG. About 80% of Qatar's liquefied natural gas exports head to Asia, but the market's already assuming that the shortfall, the unmet demand from Asia is going to spill over into the spot market. When that happens, then you'll see the entire global gas balance tighten, and as a result, we're seeing the traded price of gas in Europe spiking with it, actually above the price of the spot price of LNG in Asia, because Europe needs to import LNG, is immensely dependent upon LNG to restock its depleted natural gas reserves. And we're coming up to the restocking season now. So there's a big question mark over whether Europe is going to be able to refill its underground gas storages while it's competing with LNG in Asia, which is drawing volumes out of a kind of already very tight global balance.
And if this is prolonged, where are people going to get more LNG? Who steps up?
There's not a lot of spare capacity in the system. There is a big project called Golden Pass, which is coming on stream in the United States later this year. That is actually partly owned by Qatar Energy and ExxonMobil. So those volumes will come at a very opportune moment. But there is simply no way for the LNG market to replace a loss of 20% of supply volumes from Qatar overnight. There's just not enough spare capacity in the system. So we're going to see prices rising and rising and rising until they get to a point where it triggers demand destruction and people stop buying LNG because it's simply too expensive. What that means is things like fertilizer plants that use gas as feedstock, they shut down. Energy intensive industries shut down. In Europe, I would expect at some point to see coal replacing natural gas in the merit order of the power stack. So more coal power, less gas power, because coal will become relatively cheaper. And there'll be other measures of demand destruction, like if people have gas boilers, turning them down. Although thankfully we're heading into warmer months in the Northern Hemisphere, so that will ease the burden, if you like.
Well, I wonder, Seb, how do these prices regulate themselves? Because today, if you take, for instance, the sort of shock prices at the gas pump, maybe with the price of oil rising, U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright says that he expects that the spike in those gas prices would definitely be temporary. But we know that even though when the price of oil goes up, the price of gas goes up, when the price of oil goes down, the price at the gas pump doesn't necessarily fall exactly along with it. So how does this regulate itself? And how long does that take?
Right. Well, you're talking about crude oil and gasoline, and you're right. It kind of shoots up like a rocket and falls like a feather. And I think you could arguably say that also happens in natural gas. The complicating factor is that there are so many uses for gas: power generation, industrial feedstock, heating for space heating for homes and businesses. that it's hard to say that like exactly how long it takes for those end use prices to change, because every sector of the economy behaves differently. But let's just imagine, right, that we have a very tight natural gas market on a global basis. You've removed 20% of the supply. Imagine that Europe kind of delays the restocking of its underground storages in order to kind of help balance the market, and we see some demand destruction with coal coming to the power generation stack. Well, what happens next winter? Because if the way to balance the market is for Europe to kind of forego the refilling of its storages, then by the time we come to next winter, there won't be enough gas in storage. So I would expect to see much higher prices for natural gas next winter, which will kind of prolong this kind of elevated price scenario for natural gas markets well into, I'd say, the fourth quarter of this year and possibly even into early next year. Even if we see a kind of relatively quick solution and reopening of the Strait of Hormuz within, a month or two, then you're still going to see onward impacts going on months into the future.
Seb Kennedy, thank you very much for your time today.